Pick up the gone but never forgotten tea. A link is down below.
What's going on, YouTube? Lately we have spent so much time talking about the Ether story that the Chaos story has kind of fallen the wayside. It's been neglected and forgotten about, but it hasn't been forgotten about forever. I am here today to talk about the Voyage of Despair ending, break it down, give you guys all the necessary details to understand what is going on, as well as give you an idea of where we may be going in the future. For those that haven't seen it, this is the ending to Voyage of Despair.
It all just went back to how it was before. No one will ever know.
That apparition. I've seen it before. I know where it is.
Is it somewhere you've been?
No. Only in books. But I do know its location. Greece. Delphi, to be specific.
Then that's where we're going next. If the bad guys are there, there's a good chance my father is too.
I'm not gonna lie, the Voyage ending is a little bit lackluster, especially in comparison to other endings that we've gotten. I mean, the 9 ending was a bit of a shocker, and then the Blood of the Dead ending was just like, oh my god, like visceral, like the community was in tears after it. And then you have this ending right here, and it just kind of makes you go, alright. But there's still some important things that I think are good to note. So the first thing would be is that we kind of get a little bit of context for what's going on in this world and how it works. So at the beginning of the 9 intro cutscene, you'll notice that the artifact is activated, and once it's activated, everybody on the ship becomes zombified, and the whole ship becomes sort of hellish. And we kind of looked at this and went, wait a minute, what? How is this going on? Because Jason had always kind of prefaced his story as it's going to be set in locations in which maybe there was a zombie apocalypse. How would you know? For example, maybe there was a zombie outbreak on the Titanic that led to the sink shipping. How could you prove there wasn't? And to that I would say, well, Jason, people survived the Titanic, and they could have said, hey, there were zombies on the ship, and that's why we crashed. But that's not what happened, because there were no zombies on the ship. But don't worry, Jason has thought of an answer to that. Once our characters had defeated the Eye of Odin, which is what we fight at the end of the Easter egg, everything became cleaned up, and we see people return back to their normal selves, which is also an interesting thing to note, that in this realm, people can become zombified and then unzombified, so that may be something useful to know in the future. But this ending at least gives us context for how this world works, and this is something our characters didn't know either. They were surprised. I mean, they said no one will ever know, and that's the point. Like Jason said, how do you know there was a zombie apocalypse? And then it just didn't neatly and conveniently clean itself up. We don't. We can't know for certain. And that's, I think, what we're going to be seeing throughout a lot of this, where things are going to be happening in places that kind of seem far-fetched or unexpected, but they're going to always neatly tie themselves up together or clean themselves up. And it will beg the question, will anybody ever know what actually happened here? And maybe not. So as we move on in the cutscene, they discover this apparition, and it's of a archway with 2 columns in it, and before they can really interact with it, the ship begins to start sinking and they need to escape. And they do, they escape on a lifeboat. But Shaw proclaims that he's seen this before. He doesn't know where, but he's seen it. He thinks, though, it might be in Delphi. Now, Delphi is an ancient Greek city. In fact, it holds a lot of spiritual significance to those of ancient Greece. Today, you can actually go there today and see the ruins of Delphi. It's a popular tourist destination within Greece. And one thing to note is that Voyage of Despair takes place before 9. This is most likely one of the first adventures of the Chaos crew. So at some point they are going to work their way over to this cave, and then they are going to sniff the vapors and end up in 9. Well, my suggestion right now is that what if the aberration is actually the cave that we saw in 9? So they are basically given a hint that they need to go to Delphi and find the cave and smell the vapors and do the trial at 9. And this is what will lead into the next map. So maybe the next map will be set in Delphi, Greece, and they will go there and they have to find the aberration. And then once they do, then that will lead into 9. So the Easter egg ending will be finding the vapors, and then that will explain, maybe give us some background to 9, and then the next map would be 9. So if you could imagine, the sequence would go Voyage of Despair, map set in Delphi, and then 9. Now the reason I say that this aberration is from 9, this is because of the columns. You'll notice the columns are almost identical to the columns that you'll see in the vapor room, that they're sniffing the vapors as the Oracle is talking to them and sending them into the 9 hallucination. To me, that seems like the best fit right now, that this room is actually in Delphi, Greece, and when they sniff the vapors, then they go back in time to 9. Something like that. That's my theory right now. The other thing to note would be the mark on the top of Bruno's head. This is one of those things that we don't really know much about, but definitely is going to be important. I mean, why else would they leave that as the cliffhanger? Here's what I would suggest. So the next map will be our characters going to Delphi. Then in Delphi, not only do they need to find the aberration, but they need to figure out what the hell is going on inside Bruno. What is this light in his head? Maybe this will play into the boss fight or the final Easter egg, or allow the villains to be formally introduced to us. One thing to note is that this isn't something that has always been with Bruno. It's not like Bruno has been somebody who is secretly a bad guy this whole time. I mean, if you look at the comics, you'll notice Bruno is actually working with Scarlet's father against the main antagonist in this series. So something must have happened to Bruno while he was on the ship. This is a new development, but I also think it won't be a majorly important development because it's something that isn't brought up at all in 9, which we know takes place after Voyage of Despair. So at some point between Voyage of Despair and 9, that light in Bruno's head will be taken care of. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I don't think it's going to be a major problem in this story. That's going to wrap things up for this video. This has been my breakdown of the Voyage of Despair ending. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, possibly subscribe for more. I'm always covering the zombie storyline, so whether you enjoy the Ether story or you're enjoying the Chaos story, be sure to stay tuned because I'm going to be bringing out a bunch of new storyline videos. Have a wonderful day, and bye.